Well, hello and welcome back to 5.3 PO. I've got my engine block back and it's nice and reconditioned and basically bored out to where I was wanting to get that bored out, thanks to Mike at Ralph's Machine Shop in Wilson, North Carolina. And let's see, we are basically at the point now where it's time to start putting this together. This is the exciting time. Can't wait to get this done. Now, a couple things I wanted to point out first. Of course, this is the book that I'm using to do my rebuild. It's interesting to note that this book has a whole section on machine shop, and then it has a whole section on cleaning. This is the component cleaning chapter right here. And then it talks about basically doing and I actually did all these steps. Everything needs cleaned. Even though Mike gave me the engine back in great shape, everything needs cleaned. It probably got dirty just on my bringing it home. And of course, all these parts that I've purchased here, they might be brand new, but again, going by the book here, and the book says clean them, even if they're brand new. So I'm doing that, and I've done that already. But there's this chapter here called pre-assembly procedures. And, I read through that whole chapter, and it sounds kind of daunting because that's where you take all kinds of measurements and you make sure clearances are good and that everything is exactly, spec'd out as it should be, and that nothing is interfering with each other. And basically, the pre-assembly, you build the engine and make sure everything's good. You don't torque everything to their final settings or that sort of thing. And then basically you tear it all apart and then build it a second time, this time with the proper torque settings, with, gaskets and all the good stuff, basically finalizing it. So I'm in the pre-assembly stage. And one of the first things, there's a whole section here on pre-assembly, and I'm not sure if you could see it here, but basically it talks about measuring engine block, machine surfaces, bearing clearances, install crankshaft and plastic gauge. Talks about bearing clearance measurements, main bearing clearances, etc., etc. Installing the camshaft, proper connecting rod cap removal. It talks about all this stuff. I mean, good heavens, there's a lot of stuff here. Camshaft, making sure the rings are all, spec'd out to where they should be. So this step is going to take me some time, since I'm brand new and never done this before, and I'm going by the book and I'm going by a bunch of YouTube videos. But I'm going to take you through the whole process. So be patient with me. And if you see that I'm doing something wrong, be sure to leave a comment down below and subscribe, of course, so you can see all my latest updates. Let me know if I'm doing something wrong. Let me know if you have a better way of doing things. Leave me some suggestions if you have any. But basically, I got a lot of work ahead of me. Hopefully it'll just take me a few days, maybe a week or so to do the pre-assembly, and maybe another week or so to do the final assembly. And that's, of course, assuming that nothing else gets in the way, or assuming I don't find anything too crazy out of ordinary or whatever. But assuming everything's good to go and fits and clearances are good and everything's good, I'm thinking 2 to 4 weeks I should have this engine ready to go and fully rebuilt, ready to go in the Suburban. All right, so let's start this pre-assembly procedure. All right, pre-assembly procedures. Talks about, do I really need to pre-assemble? The short answer to whether every engine needs to be pre-assembled is a resounding yes. All right, and then it talks about clean work area. I think I got my work area about as clean as I can make it. So anyway, let's see. So basically it talks about this pre-assembly checklist, which I've printed out. I don't have it here at the moment, but basically it talks about getting some oil to spread on here and I've got my I couldn't find the Pennzoil brand, which is the only place I could find, the only thing I could find was this off-brand SAE HD30 oil. I know it's not the best brand, but obviously this is just for lubricating the pre-assembly stuff, and a brush to use for that. All right. So measuring, let me grab my light here so I can see what's going on here. It says measure engine block machine surfaces. Chances are your home measuring tools aren't as accurate as a machine shop, but this doesn't mean you can't use them to double check whether your engine block machine work was performed correctly. Utmost trust in your machine shop may tempt you to skip this step, but before doing so, keep in mind that machinists can make mistakes. 2. Use the tightening specifications shown in steps 7 through 8 in Chapter 8 to install each main cap, and use a dial bore gauge to measure the diameter of each main bearing bore in a crosswise pattern, 2 measurements per each bore. All measurements should be consistent with 1/1000th of an inch, with a maximum out of round of less than 1/1000th on any given bore. Okay, remove the main caps and perform the same procedure on each cylinder bore. Measuring the bore in a few different places along its height, record these measurements. They should be within 1/1000th as well. So since I don't have the caps on, but I'm going to go ahead and do the cylinder bores first, since that's easy to do and I've got that. So I've got this trusty Fowler dial bore gauge, and so basically the cylinders were bored to 3.81. All right, so I'm going to take my trusty gauge here, and I'm not a huge fan of using this cover, so I'm just going to go ahead and take it off. So bear with me here for a second. And then I'm going to take this and put it into the... All right. And then I'm going to use the 3.8 inch anvil. All right. So I'm going to take this off. And I'm going to put this guy on here. Screw this in. All right, next we go over to our micrometer. And let me go ahead and set this back here. Okay. The micrometer. So here this measures between 3 and 4 inches. So this would be like 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, 3.4, 3.5. So I'm going to go to 3.8, right? And then this would be 3.80, okay? And then that would be 3.805, and then this would be 3.81, okay, which is what I'm looking for here, 3.81. All right, so I'm going to stick that into my okay, so I'm going to set my trusty bore gauge here into the vise. So what we'll do is we'll use 3.8 plus we'll go 2/100ths over. We'll stick that guy on here, so it's a little bit over 3.81. And then we'll stick that in there. And we'll go ahead and screw that on there. So right now it's set to 3.82. All right, while the micrometer is set to 3.81. See, this is a 3 to 4 inch, so it's 0.8 and then 81. So what we want to do is zero this guy out. So we're going to put this on here. And then we're going to find out where it reflects, which is right about 8 o'clock there. So I'm going to set the 0. I'm going to zero it out to right about there. See where I have the 0? And then it should reflect right at the 0. All right, so I'm set at 3.81. All right, first we're going to go like that, and then we're going to do an across pattern. So you can see it looks like it deviates at about, gosh, look at that. That's 5/10,000ths. All right, so let's try it this way. 5/10,000. I'm not even writing these down because this is so darn close. All right. Ooh, look at that. Oh gosh, it's so close. All right, and then I'm going to go down to the bottom of the cylinder. So there looks like there's maybe just a tad bit of taper, but it's pretty close. It's close to just 1,000th, which I think we could live with. And then let's turn this, let's do the 10 o'clock position. That's almost exactly the same. And then let's do the other cross. So they're pretty close. There's a slight bit of taper, maybe about a 10,000th, or I'm sorry, a 1,000th. But I think that's within specs. All right, let's go on to the next cylinder. It's 1,000th there. Looks like it's if I recall this properly, if I recall this correct, if it's left, it's bigger. So that's okay. It's 1,000th bigger than 3.81. All right. So that's pretty close. That's like just barely over 1,000th. Same thing. So this one's beautifully round. See if there's any kind of taper problems. There's about 0.0015 deviation, so a little bit bigger, and that's what we found on the last cylinder. But that deviation is pretty similar. So there's no roundness issues on these two cylinders, but there is. These two are almost identical in that there's a little bit of taper. It's a little bit bigger at the bottom and narrower at the top by just like not even 2/2000ths. It's crazy accurate. Look at that. Look at that. That's beautiful. I mean, you know, who's going to complain about that? All right. All in all, I have to say Mike did a really, really nice job on this. 1,000th over what I had asked for is, I ain't gonna sit there and complain about that. All right, let's sit there. Let's go. Oh, it's about. I'm not the greatest at my math, but one big one is 1,000th and one little one is a 10,000th. So 1.5 thousandths, I suppose. Which is pretty much, that's the same. Look at that, right on the spot. Money, I ain't gonna complain about that. Oh, same thing. we're on to cylinder number 2. Look at that. See that? Pretty close to all the other readings I've been getting. You know, when it's that off, just that little tiny amount, at least it's very consistent. I mean, all the numbers, taper and roundness, were all within what, 1/10,000th. It's crazy. I mean, to get that consistent. So hats off to Mike at Rouse Machine Shop in Wilson. Very nice job. I'm very confident that everything's going to work out really well with these cylinders. Next thing is I have to flip it over and put the caps on and measure, make sure the main bearing openings, if you will, are perfectly round. So we're going to do that on, now that you've seen my method here of measuring using the dial bore gauge, I figure I might as well just go ahead and dedicate this video to just that, on just the cylinder walls. And then the rest of the measurements should be a lot quicker. Okay, so we're going to wrap up this video here and call it a day, and we'll see you on the next episode. So I suppose this episode was mainly a how to use a cylinder bore gauge, dial bore gauge. Thanks so much.